Hey friend, this is the Traveling Wellnesspreneur podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Temple. I travel full-time running my dream wellness biz from the tropics, and I want to share with you how you can create a lifestyle of freedom and purpose too. Stay tuned for inspiring and fun conversations that will empower you to take action towards your dream lifestyle of travel and freedom. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Traveling Wellnesspreneur podcast. Now, before we get into today's episode, I gotta remind you one last time, if you are catching this before the 22nd of March, be sure to join us this weekend, March 22nd to 24th, at the free virtual summit, Liberate Your Life. This is for heart-led entrepreneurs who are dreaming of living a life of travel and purpose, whether that means you are thinking about moving abroad, or you just want to dip your toe into short-term travel while working, or you want a location-independent lifestyle. We have 9 guest expert speaker interviews, plus I'll be going live in the private Facebook group each day of the summit with a masterclass on how to plan, how to prepare, and how to pursue your unique goals and dreams as a traveling entrepreneur. So check out the show notes to join us there. If you're catching this after the weekend, you can always DM me on Instagram to see if there's any way to get your hands on the replays. And on today's episode, I'm chatting with my dear friend Caroline Layzell. Caroline is a wonderful yoga teacher trainer, and she's going to be talking all about her past traveling and running a yoga studio in Bali and how she got there and what she's doing now. Caroline has so many awesome things on the go, and she also has her own summit coming up at the end of March for women living with endometriosis. I really enjoyed this conversation with Caroline. I got to learn a little bit more about her past with travel and how that has shaped her life in so many ways, as you'll see, from meeting her husband on a tiny island and having a baby in Bali to where she is now and everywhere in between. Here's her bio and enjoy the episode. Caroline Layzell is a Yoga Alliance registered 500-hour yoga teacher and teacher trainer. She's been teaching yoga since 2011 and teaching yoga teacher training programs for many years as well. She is currently teaching locally in the UK and globally at retreats and teacher trainings, has an online membership, and is hosting an upcoming summit for endometriosis, which you can learn more about in the show notes. Here's Caroline. Welcome, Caroline. I'm so glad you are here with me. Thanks for being here. How are you, and where are you joining us from today?
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here as well, and always happy to talk about travel and life and all of these exciting adventures. I'm joining from Exeter in Devon, so in the southwest of England, which is a little bit along the coast from where I grew up, beautiful part of the country. And it's a sunny day today, which is a wonderful, wonderful way to start the day.
Wonderful. I'm so glad the sun is out for you. And there's a lot that I want to chat with you about today, about what you're up to now. But before we get there, I want to take it back in time and chat a little bit about your life when you were living in Indonesia and in Bali. Yeah, really what that experience was for you. So let's travel back in time for a moment. And I know that you were traveling and living abroad many years ago for quite some time. And you were living in Bali and you were directing a yoga studio there. How long were you in that area for?
Yeah, so when I arrived in Indonesia, it was 10 years ago now, or just a little bit over, and it was a tiny little island called Nusa Lembongan, which was a sort of 30-minute boat ride from Bali. And back then, it was one boat a day to get there. So if you missed it, there was no way of getting there, and things have progressed a lot there. It was a place that I had discovered when I had gone backpacking almost 8 years before that. And it was an elusive, tiny little island that I discovered through scuba diving, strangely enough. And there was a mola mola, big creature underwater that everyone wanted to go and see. And I decided for the second stint of traveling, I must go back there and explore and get some diving in again. And I arrived on the island with no intention of staying very long, and it was
Mhm.
just to do some diving. And I discovered a lot of people who I'd met in previous adventures of traveling were actually living and working there. And within a month of arriving, I was offered some work as a dive master. And I got offered some work as a yoga teacher as well. And it was just this thing that felt like it was meant to be. So I stayed,
Mm.
and I had no real agenda of where I needed to be. And as you said, I was traveling, so I had that luxury of freedom. Part of my goal with this journey was to explore places and try and find somewhere that I could stay for a while. Such a big part of traveling for me was exploring. And then finally, guess you get to a point where you want to settle a little within it.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
discovered this island, and I just loved it so much. And as life progressed on this island, I met my husband. I had lots of opportunities presenting themselves to me, and one of them was to create this amazing, beautiful yoga studio. And it was just like from an empty patch of land to designing physically how a building was going to look and creating the ambience and feeling around it. And it was just such a special time. Looking back, I think if I were the older Caroline now, and a bit more kind of sensible and grounded and thinking about how a business should look, I would have been quite frightened by the prospect. But as I was there and in it, I think I was really just like, I can do this. Anything's possible. And it really felt like that. And I really believe when you're in that space that so many magical things can happen because you just trust in yourself, you trust in the situation, and one step becomes the next step, and so on and so forth, and it just evolves. So I went from arriving on this beautiful island 10 years ago with just my backpack to setting up this amazing business, and it was fantastic. It was a yoga school that invited people from all around the world to come and practice together. And we progressed to do sort of yoga teacher trainings. We grew this jungle in the garden, which was such a passion of mine as well, to watch all of this life develop around us. And yeah, it was just such an adventure, such a big part of the community, and a wonderful way to meet so many different people.
That is such a great story. Once you decided this was the place for you to be for the next while, you were there for about 7 years.
So around about eight
Yeah.
years. So we
Okay.
opened in
Mhm.
2015, and then or just before, and COVID
Mhm.
arrived.
Mhm.
What was that? March 2020, and the
Yeah.
physical doors closed then. But yeah,
Mhm.
we had this period of 7 years of being on the island before we moved over to mainland
Yeah.
Bali.
You mentioned that you met your husband there. Like you literally met him on the island?
Yeah, and it's crazy
Wow.
because so many people tell you when you go traveling that you're reducing your chances of meeting that
Yeah.
ideal person, right? And you've got to have this
Yeah.
sensible life at home, and that's how you're going to meet people. But I literally arrived on the island, and where I was offered work as a dive master for a month, he was
Mhm.
another dive master in the
Oh,
same
okay.
place. He arrived a week before me to the island. And yeah, we just, got to know each other, and 6 months later we were together. Quite random to turn up on this tiny
Yeah.
island and meet your future husband.
Well, yeah, it just shows the synchronicity of you being there for so many reasons. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I have many girlfriends in Bali who would be inspired to hear that story and know that there is hope
There is hope. There's definitely
out
hope.
here.
It is.
Yeah, out
Absolutely.
here on these little islands. That's so cool that that's where you two met. I love that. And you guys have a little one now. And how old is she?
She's about to turn 5 next month.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
she's literally, I'm 4 years old and 11 months and this many days. And she handed out
yeah.
party invitations this morning. So she's loving life. So she was born in Bali as well, which was
Oh, wow.
an amazing experience to be able to have her there,
Mm.
because the culture is so rich around children, and
Hmm.
childbirth is such a good process there as well. So yeah, it's such an adventure to look back on. It was a wonderful time.
And now I know that you are heading back to Bali soon and you're coming back to host a retreat. And I know you've done retreats and teacher trainings and all kinds of stuff on the islands before. I would love for you to share just a little bit about what you have planned for this retreat. Give us some details.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be able to do this. So since leaving Bali, it's been a big part of our life that we've missed very much. And I wanted to incorporate into my business, now that we're away from there, this opportunity to come back and visit, and make that sort of an annual experience, and share all of the magical things that I love the most. So I am
Mhm.
taking a group of incredible women to Ubud, and it's just on the outskirts of Ubud. So it almost feels like we're not really in the busy part of it. We're away from
Mm.
everything and jungle all around us. And it's a 6 day, 6 night experience. And a lot of it is going to be around really getting deeply back into your yoga practice, detoxing, switching off, or digital detox, I should say, switching off from life as we know it. A lot of people are coming from the Western world, so it's going to be quite the
Hmm.
transition for them. There's going to be a lot of cultural exploration. We're there over a new moon. And as you know, in Bali yourself at the moment, the culture for the new moons and full moons is just
Mm.
magical. The energy is so exciting. And there'll be the smell of the ceremonies and the incense and everything, which is just such an important part. And when I hear the bells and everything ringing, it brings back such
Hmm.
happy memories. There's going to be this magical trip to Pyramids of Chi, which is a
Mm.
sound healing experience. And it's just amazing. It's such a beautiful place. Lots of water temples that we'll visit at specific points along the way. I'll be taking people to my favorite restaurants and sharing my favorite meals, favorite experiences. So it's kind of like a safe environment in which to explore because I've lived there for so long.
Yeah, I love how it is a unique offering because you've spent so much time here in the past, and it's kind of more of a homecoming for you. I know you're really looking forward to spending some time back here, and you're coming for kind of an extended trip. What else do you have planned while you are over here back in Bali? Do you have kind of a list going of the things that are at the top of the list that you want to do? Do you want to share a couple with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been, gosh, nearly 3 years since we left. My daughter is very excited about coming. She tells everybody
Mm.
that she was born in Bali, so it's this big adventure for her. My husband's playing it very, very cool about the places that he wants to go and see. For me, I miss the beaches. I miss the amazing food and the ability to dive into any restaurant and just find the most indulgently healthy, lovely, organic kind of food. I actually really am excited to get to the sandy beaches and just be able to get my feet in the ocean every day. The coconuts. I'm going
Hmm.
to go to Yoga Barn, which was always my
Hmm.
kind of escape place,
Yeah.
and practice some yoga with some of my favorite teachers who are still there, which is going to be
Mm.
fantastic. We're considering a trip over to the Gili Islands, technically
Cool.
not Bali, but yeah, just the
Hmm.
idea of
Hmm.
being away from traffic and busyness and that real tropical island vibe. And as you say, it's a
Nice.
homecoming. It's going to be such a special
Yeah,
time to come back.
it really is. And with your daughter too, that's so sweet. When you started traveling, before you ended up in Nusa Lembongan or Bali, you were traveling prior to that, you mentioned. And I'm curious, what was the starting point? What made you choose to try out that lifestyle? Were you location independent or were you taking longer trips from the UK?
Yeah, so I first went traveling in 2007, and I was in that position where I had worked in London for a few years. I was taking lots of backpacking trips, which, when you have the bucket list of places you want to go to, as soon as you start to go on these adventurous trips, you meet people that just expand your bucket list. It never gets shorter.
Mm.
And I
Hmm.
remember having bought my first flat in London. I had the good job, I was safe, I was steady, and I just decided it wasn't enough. I wanted something extra. So I took a year off deliberately to just travel and explore. And I trained as a dive master. And doing that, I realized that a lot of people were making their life work for them in a way that they could travel and be funded. During that trip, I was headhunted to Bermuda. So I'd lived in Bermuda. So I actually haven't lived in the UK for
Mm.
20 years. This is why
Oh,
I think you referred to it earlier as the reverse culture shock thing
yeah,
about being
yeah,
back. It's such a long time.
yeah.
So I moved to Bermuda, which was just wonderful. And it was a new place from which I could travel. I took lots of trips to the Galapagos, Ecuador,
Oh.
so many different adventures around America and Canada and everything. It started to feel like each time I went back to the normal life, it became more and more difficult to settle from these adventure trips. And I knew that the Bermuda period was quite temporary because you have to have a work permit and you can only stay for so long. So in my final year of being in Bermuda, I decided consciously that I needed to go and explore the travel life more. And I needed to see if I could make it a more permanent part of my life rather than just dipping in and out and just go for it. I had no plans for life after Bermuda. So I retrained. I became a yoga teacher during that time. I took a holistic lifestyle course in America. I went and trained as a personal trainer, and I set myself up in a way that I had some tools as well as the dive master work that I could earn from. And as part of my trip, I bought a one-way ticket and I just flew to Singapore and took that as
Mm.
my base. Went to India, did some more training, went to some other countries and explored. I just remember sitting in a cafe thinking, I can do this. Like, this could be my normal. This could be my normal. I could decide from month to month where I want to be and what I want to be doing. And I just felt so confident about it. I remember having this feeling that, it was possible. Other people were doing this. And I wish I had all of the tools in place, that perhaps we know now. And I know in the summit that you're sharing, you've got all of these amazing speakers sharing their journey, which is just fantastic. And I just had this deep sense of it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. I just need to find where the place is. And I trusted that that would come. It sounds so out there, doesn't it, to say, but I trusted that I would feel when I was in the right place.
Yeah.
And it did, it happened. And I was open. And I think when you take yourself out of a situation and put yourself in a fresh one, as scary as that can be for some people, that leap of faith kind of kickstarts this momentum of possibility. And that's when I think life gets really exciting, because you open up your eyes and your horizon as to what you're willing to take in and receive. And you kind of
Mhm.
get clearer on what you don't want, and head more in the direction of what you do want. And then that meets you as well in return. Very clear that one day that's what I was going to do. And I took the decision
Wow.
that that was the moment to do it. And it worked out.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And wouldn't you say that the hardest part in that whole journey was probably just that initial decision to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I
And
had
like
great
you,
resistance around it in the
hmm
beginning,
hmm
because it's a
hmm
big decision, isn't it? And everyone's telling you,
yeah.
no, you need to be sensible and do this and this. And I think you
hmm
just have to listen to that inner voice. It gets louder
yeah.
and louder, and yeah, you have to go with it.
It's great advice. And like you said, once you were there, you really started to realize that this is possible. And I think for so many of us, we don't even know what's out there, or we just see other people doing it and we think like, oh, I wish I could. But once you take those initial steps and put yourself out there and get a little uncomfortable and take a little bit of a longer trip than you've done before, or go somewhere you've never been, it's so
Yeah.
interesting to see how our whole psyche can change and we start to open up to these possibilities that we never realized could exist for us, right?
Absolutely. And I remember many experiences along the way that were really challenging. So it's not like you take the decision and suddenly life is, rosy and wonderful. There were
Yeah.
many moments when I equally sat in bus stations in tears, talking to people from home. And they just would remind me, like, you're brave, you're doing this, this is just a bump in the road, and you've got to keep
hmm
on going. People who I had imagined would say to me, you should come home now. But it was really that encouragement and listening to that inner voice, and just you get more confident with those challenges, and suddenly you feel like you can do anything. There's no restrictions, because I think when you move aside from modern day society and how we think life should be, suddenly everything becomes possible. And it's just that
hmm
mindset shift, as you say, and it is the hardest part. But once you have that mindset of anything can come, we confidently take steps in that direction then.
Yeah, well said. Now, you've been back in the UK for a few years, and after the initial reverse culture shock set in, I know that you've been up to some amazing things since you have been back, and you also have some incredible stuff coming up there in the UK and online globally. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about what have you been up to? Who are you working with now? Who are you supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first moved back, I had set up everything online from the COVID phase. So I had an online membership and everything. But it was seemed really important to me when I first arrived back into England to get back in person and just reconnect with people face to face. So I spent a period of time pausing the online and reconnecting with people in person, which was really important then. But now I'm back in that online space again, because I recognize that that can give me the opportunity to be anywhere in the world at any given moment. So that's kind of a longer term goal for me again. I'm supporting yoga teachers very much around anatomy as a focus. So I've kind of fine-tuned all the teacher trainings that I used to do and focused in on the anatomy piece. So I'm working with a few different yoga schools teaching the anatomy section of their teacher trainings, one of which is going to be in Portugal. So the travel piece kind of still
Mm.
pulls me there, which is great. Since being back, I have endometriosis, which is a condition that affects 1 in 10, I think it is in the UK, 1 in 7
Wow.
in some countries, actually, which is just
Mhm.
insane. And I didn't realize I had it until I had my daughter. So I was diagnosed during childbirth. and everything suddenly made sense about life before. Now, it was much easier to manage in Bali because the temperature was nicer, stress levels were simpler, slower pace of living, and eating healthy. Everywhere you go, you can eat really well. When we came back to England, it's a lot of a shift on many levels. And I realized that my symptoms were flaring up a lot. So I had to spend a lot of time really retraining how my body was working. And through that, I've started to really share and build this really welcoming community on the endometriosis side, where I'm giving tips around how to move according to your cycle and how to take care of yourself in a way that your symptoms are not going to flare up. Pain management, stress management, all of these amazing things. And we have created this community where people are really willing to sort of try to overcome their difficulties and shifting the mindset part as well, because it's really easy when you're in pain to kind of focus on that. My objective has always been like, what can we do as opposed to what's restricting us? It's been really, really interesting to continue to work in that field.
It's such an important space. And I know a handful of women myself who are also living with endometriosis, and you don't hear about it enough. And there's not much information out there. And I'm really happy to see that you're creating this community and sharing this important information with people around the world. You have your own summit coming up, which I'm so excited that you're going to be offering that. Can you share a bit about that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't have a wealth of resources available. And I found it really hard to sort of navigate what was true and what was not. So I've created this event called Thriving with Endometriosis, and we have got 12 women across the spectrum of holistic healing. We start at the end of March to present some of these interviews. So it's going to be running from the 28th of March to the 31st of March. And each of these amazing women are sharing around nutrition and pelvic floor health and fertility issues. They're going to be talking about Pilates and exercise physiology, all of these different resources being shared so that people who are joining, and it's a free event, so it's really accessible for everybody to learn. The goal is that people learn something that they can apply to their own life. And it's not relying on the medical interventions of surgery or hormone replacement or pills and things like this. So yeah, it's going to be this amazing event where people can really create their own endometriosis toolbox and ways that they can manage and empower their bodies and reconnect to their bodies. Because I think the biggest thing is when you're in pain, you start to not like parts of your body and your lifestyle. And I really want people to recognize that with the right tools and the right mindset in particular, we can come back to this place of increasing the quality of our life. And that's always been such a goal, I realized, through the travel, through everything. It's about living life to the best that you can rather than just settling or compromising. It's just like, life's there to live and it's short and it's precious, and let's go and enjoy it. So yeah, the goal is for people to feel really empowered from all of these different settings. And I'll be sharing daily yoga practices. So yeah, really, really excited to share that.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that does sound just so empowering and informative. I'm really excited for that as well. We're definitely going to share the details for that in the show notes. Well, Caroline, it's been such a pleasure to hear a little bit more about your history with travel and how you've gotten to where you are and what you're up to now. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, I look forward to chatting again soon. You and I are in a mastermind together and we're chatting all the time. So it's it's nice to actually have a conversation face to face and learn a little bit more about you, about your past. It's been really fun.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed sharing, and it's just really ignited this excitement for travel again for me as well. So thank you. It's really wonderful to speak with you.
Take care, and we'll see you in Bali.
Yay, see you there.
That's it for now. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, let's stay connected. Follow me on Instagram at Ali Temple Yoga. Join us in the Traveling Wellnesspreneurs Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.